I have with me Dan Woods. He's a columnist at Forbes.com and CTO and editor at CITO Research. Dan, thank you very much for joining us at DatacenterDynamics New York.
Thanks for having me.
Dan, you've written an article on the urgent necessity for comprehensive power management in the data center. Which vendors do you think are leaders in this area, and what makes them leaders?
Well, the first thing you need if you're going to do a good job of power management is to understand where your power is being used, and that's the biggest challenge. So there's a couple of vendors that can really help you tell that. PowerAssure is excellent at providing a model of where your power is being used and where it's going. Nlight also has a strong capability for tracking power management in the data center. And then a product I like very much called Precise is a product that tracks application usage and allows you to create a master model of what's going on in the data center, but it has an extensible performance management database. So often you find that a product of either of these types doesn't exactly capture exactly what you want. Well, having an extensible database is a really important part, and all three of these products really help in that regard. And what they do is they turn the lights on. You can see where your power is being used, and then you can start making decisions about how to optimize its usage.
The article I referred to is addressed to CIOs. Where within an enterprise hierarchy does an effective push to implement DCIM tools usually come from?
That's an interesting question, because you ask where does an effective push come from. Often a push comes from the data center managers or from the CIO themselves, and frequently they are not able to make the case that a capital allocation makes sense for this area. I mean, obviously the power bills go higher, but there's a very strange structure in most companies where the CIO himself or herself is not paying the power bill. It's the facilities manager that's paying the power bill. So the incentives aren't aligned to make the CIO or the data center manager actually be the one who really pushes desperately to get a better situation. Often the most effective push happens when a competitor in the marketplace starts showing IT infrastructure that is more flexible and lower cost, and they start punishing a company by offering products at lower prices or being able to offer better services or more services because their IT infrastructure is more efficient and more flexible. I'd say the most effective pushes to improve the data center are going to come from business results, where you're being beaten up in the marketplace, and then you decide we have to do something better in order to compete.
You listed 11 questions every CIO should be able to answer if they want to say they have an effective power management strategy. Looking at the market today, what portion of all CIOs do you think can actually answer all 11 questions?
Well, I think that it's very, very few who have a comprehensive model of their data center. And my talk later today is on business intelligence for the data center. And I think it's time for IT to start paying attention to the advice it's been giving the rest of the company. Most of the time, IT is telling the rest of the company, here, create models of your activity. Now, take those models, capture data. Now, let's take that data, let's put it in a model in a data warehouse and really understand the business. Well, most CIOs haven't taken their own advice about the data center. And so I'd say that very few CIOs have a top-to-bottom model, not of absolutely everything that goes on at a data center, because you don't need to know everything about a business. But you need a detailed model about what's happening with your power management. What application service levels are important to provide? How can you reconfigure your data center rapidly to make sure that the important applications stay up and the other ones can get turned off? What is your realistic peak capacity? Because most data centers are built to be, there's a systematic overcapacity construction problem in data centers. So I'd say that it's important that CIOs start building a model that's detailed where they're needed for energy management, for areas like that, and then also that is just good enough the rest of the areas.
In another one of your articles, you wrote that IT managers will inevitably have to start monitoring applications in addition to the IT infrastructure that they're monitoring today. Can you explain why this shift is going to happen?
Well, if you think of why we have data centers, it's to run applications. And if you think of the way most data centers are run, they're run on a guild system. So you have the various layers of the data center. You have the application service level, which is defined. You have the application, the IT infrastructure to run it, the power distribution and cooling infrastructure, and then the network connectivity and the power coming from the outside of the building at the bottom. Okay, so far so good. Now each one of those layers has somebody running it as its own kingdom. In the era of the cloud, all of the different under-the-hood skills in each one of those layers are going to become much simpler. You're going to be either getting appliances that take the under-the-hood complexity of each of these layers out of the picture. You're also going to be empowering users to do more with cloud resources themselves and have more control over their own environments. And so instead of having this be looked at as a set of layers, things are going to be looked at as applications with the necessary infrastructure to support them. And that's going to become the primary way that data centers are looked at, not in the layers that I just mentioned. So if you can't understand exactly each application and its consumption of resources and how those resources relate to the resource pool as a whole, and how you can make decisions about moving that application load to this data center or to another data center, to optimize some things like, reduce to arbitrage between power costs or whatever, you're not going to really be able to, effectively manage the data center. And this, of course, this is another area where people may not make these sorts of changes until they find that their business is suffering and that they have to have a new level of flexibility because a competitor actually has it and is beating them up with it.
Is the technology already available for IT managers to monitor both IT and applications?
Yes. There is no one solution that is going to manage everything, and there's no one solution that is going to be, the end all and be all for this type of challenge. But if you look at all of the things that have been created to manage the silos, the different layers of the data center, those products are going to play a role. And then if you look at the products like PowerSure, Enlight, Precise, others that are built to be umbrellas, and then if you add to that your own monitoring that you put in place to monitor things that products don't handle, out of those capabilities, you should be able to create a very effective model of the data center that allows you to, first understand what's going on, then make decisions about optimizing it, and then continuing to make progress after that.
Dan, thank you very much.
My pleasure.